So Meta actually made a huge announcement back in January, but I only caught wind of it recently, and it's the fact that they are now rolling out ads to Threads. So we are getting another placement for your ads. What does that mean for you as an advertiser? Let's go ahead and start breaking it down. All right, so here's the actual announcement from Meta. This was actually back in January 24. Like I said, I only caught one of this recently, so I apologize for the late news on this. But here are some of the key takeaways as they are announcing that starting today with they're doing a limited test. So if you are not seeing this in your ad account, don't be surprised. They're probably only doing this with very, very large advertisers spending millions, if not billions of dollars per year. But they said here, Threads is our newest, fastest growing social media app. The Threads community has now over 300 million monthly active users, and we're seeing that 3 out of 4 people on Threads follow at least one business. Now, one interesting point about that 300 million monthly active users is that Zuckerberg was once asked when Threads would have ads, and he said that they would do it once they approached 1 billion users. They're well off that mark, so I think they're realizing they're not going to get to 1 billion users simply because obviously Threads is just a direct competitor to Twitter. Twitter's never gotten to 1 billion users. I think the largest it's ever gotten to is about 500 million. So they're just kind of seeing the writing on the wall. Okay, cool. Well, we're not going to get to that number, but doesn't mean we can't make money off the platform anyway. So let's go ahead and start launching some ads. All right, so back to the announcement here. So here they gave an announcement starting today. A small number of advertisers will test ads in Threads to help campaigns go farther by reaching the growing Threads community. During early tests in the Threads feed will be image ads that appear between pieces of content in the Threads home feed for a small percentage of people. So that's very important to note that it's only image ads that will start appearing in Threads for the time being. I'm sure that will change as time moves on, but it does make sense that that's what they're going to be starting with. It's the easiest and simplest way to test because obviously when it comes to videos and carousels, there's so much that goes into the appearance and aesthetics of that and the way it has to appear in a newsfeed for it to be effective. So the easiest way to see if this is actually even worth it, which I'm sure they'll still do it even if it's not effective, is starting with image ads. So here's the example that they use of Jasper Market. That's always the example they give for anything Facebook related. It's just an imaginary business, or at least I've always assumed that it's an imaginary business. And so you can see here Threads going on, and then boom, right there, the actual image ad appears. So it looks like when you, in the grand scheme of things, that this is going to be most similar to a Facebook ad. The reason for that being is because with a Facebook ad, you see the text first and you get 3 lines of text, right? And that's what we see here. Now, they're saying that this is all the text for this one, so it might be a little bit different, but nonetheless, you see the text first, whereas obviously in Instagram, you see the image first, and then there's the image, and then you do see a headline as well. In Instagram, you do not see a headline, but in Facebook, you do. So again, it's going to be most similar to how we already know it to be inside of Facebook. So helping people discover businesses they love, people come to Meta for a personalized experience, etc., etc. To ensure we find the right balance of content people see on Threads, we will monitor this small test closely to see how it's going before rolling out ads in Threads more broadly. So that's their way of saying, hey, we're going to be really cautious about this and make sure that it's a great experience. But I can promise you that even if Threads ads tank, they're still going to do it because it's still going to make them money, and there's no reason for them to not make that extra money. So they're trying to sound somewhat benevolent here, but don't fall for that trick. All right, brand safety and suitability on Threads. We remain committed to investing in policies and tools for businesses to manage their brand safety and suitability of their brand environment on Meta technologies, and this commitment extends to Threads. Today, we will begin to test inventory filter for ads in Threads. So when you are inside of Ads Manager and you choose your placements, right, you can choose like, hey, I want to be on Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, all that kind of stuff. So what they're saying right here is that you're going to see that checkbox on your ad sets level interface, and you're going to be able to select that or deselect it. Very simple process. We're all familiar with this. So kind of nice to know that we'll have that freedom and flexibility, because for whatever reason, if you may not want to be on Threads, you won't be forced to be on there. You're going to go ahead and be able to deselect it. All right. So now let's talk about the impact on your ad. So broadly speaking, with the impact for everyone, assuming everyone just naturally uses this, this using the Advantage Plus placements / all placements, it means that your CPMs are going to go down, or your cost per 1,000 impressions. Now, if you are someone suffering from high CPMs, this is great news. If you're someone who has never suffered from high CPMs, then obviously you don't really have anything to worry about. But I would say overall, this is good news in the sense from a lowering CPM standpoint. Now, the reason the CPMs would be going down is because now there is more placements to be reached and less competition on the Threads placement. So therefore, your overall ad CPM or campaign level CPM will go down. Now, some of you might be thinking, oh, so does this mean I should strictly run ads on Threads because that will give me the cheapest CPMs? Well, hypothetically, that is the case. I can't guarantee it, but it doesn't mean that you should do that, right? It's lower CPMs isn't the end all be all. If the higher quality people are still on Facebook and Instagram, which I imagine that they will be, then you're gonna just have to live with higher CPMs. But I also imagine that for some few select businesses, maybe Threads actually will be the best place. And so, yeah, you could theoretically run 100% of your campaigns on there, on that placement, on that platform, and you will get nice and low CPMs and very little competition. All right, the next thing this means is that we're now going to have to start worrying about how our ad looks on another placement. This is a smaller thing, but still something to consider, right? Because obviously we pay close attention to what our ad looks like on Facebook and Instagram, but now we need to pay close attention to what our ad looks like on Threads. I don't think it's going to be a huge difference. Obviously, we'll see when it rolls out and we have a little bit more access to it. I don't think it will be too different. I mean, typically an ad that looks good on Facebook also looks good on Instagram and vice versa. But at the same time, Threads is a very different platform from both of those, where it's a text-heavy, text-based platform, unlike the others. So there may be some adjusting that we'll need to do from a creative standpoint, particularly when they eventually roll out videos and carousels. But again, I don't think it's gonna be something that's gonna be too big of a hassle. All right, the next question you might be asking is, what is the actual impact from, profitability, revenue standpoint? And that's really going to depend on business to business, because I did a little bit of research thanks to some AI help. I didn't have to spend hours doing this, but Threads has a very interesting demographic breakdown compared to other social media platforms. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. All right, so here are some interesting facts I found about Threads that will be good for you to know in terms of, is this something that's going to actually be profitable for you? Will it actually help you generate more revenue, or is it simply just going to lower your CPMs, which is still a good thing, right? So the largest age group in Threads is 25 to 34 years old, accounting for 29 to 36%. I actually found that to be very surprising. I thought it would have been an older demographic inside of Threads. And then the second largest group is 18 to 24 year olds, 19 to 20%. And then users aged 45 and older represent 25%. So the 18 to 24% year old group, that's not a group that spends a whole lot of money. So I don't anticipate that that is going to be a big boom for anyone. So the groups that spend the most money are the 25 to 34 year olds and the 45 and older, more so the 45 and older. And so when you break it down, that is more than half of the users on the platform. So that actually is a good piece of news, right? It's not TikTok where everyone is, I don't should just say everyone, but 90% of people are 18 to 24 that don't spend money. It does seem that the age groups are favorable to demographics that spend money. But here's probably one of the more interesting parts, is that Threads is predominantly male, as are all social media platforms except for Pinterest, but it's a huge difference, and we'll see the comparison in just a second. But Threads is 68% of its users are men compared to 32% being women. So if you are a female-based business, that is your target audience, you're probably not going to get a whole lot of benefit from this rollout to Threads. However, if you are a male-based business with a male audience, then this actually could be a huge boom for you and your business. Among the males, 28% are aged between 15 and 23. You're not going to get a whole lot of money from them. And then 11% fall into the 18 to 25 range, which means everyone else outside of that is older than 24 years old. Female users are less represented in the younger age brackets, with only 5% in the 18 to 25 range. So now let's compare that to other platforms right here. By the way, this is Perplexity. If you have not used Perplexity, really great research tool. You just ask it questions and it summarizes answers for you, as opposed to you having to click on a bunch of links via Google, but it still gives all its sources so you can see where this is pulling from. So Let's compare that demographic breakdown from Threads. So it actually is by far the most male dominant social media platform. So Threads is at 68% male, Twitter/X is at 60.9%, Facebook at 56, Instagram at 52%, TikTok at 53, and LinkedIn at 56. Like I said, I think the only, I could be wrong with this, but I think the only female dominant social media platform out there is Pinterest. So that is really, really interesting and honestly surprising that it's that heavy towards male users, especially because the integration with the Instagram app, and there's a nice healthy population of females on the Instagram app, so you think there'd be a little bit more of a balance on the thread side, but for whatever reason that certainly is not the case. And one thing I did ask, which I don't know how this corroborates because there are way more active users on Instagram, but it says approximately 70% of Threads users are also active on Instagram. If that were true, I think there would be a lot more than 300 million monthly active users. So this one I don't necessarily trust, but it could also just be one of those things where what defines an active user, right? Are you actually spending a good amount of time on there? Are you just accidentally clicking the Threads integration and you quickly click back to Instagram? Who knows what that means, but these demographic breakdowns certainly will dictate whether or not this is something that you should be excited about, or it's going to be pretty neutral for your business. All right, so my overall thoughts on this is that it's going to be an okay rollout. I don't think unless for a very, very few select businesses that are very dominant in terms of male, in terms of the target audience, I don't think this is going to be a big boom for anyone, but I also don't see it as a bad thing. I think most businesses will see a very nice moderate bump. If the worst thing that's going to happen is that if you get lower CPMs, it still means you're going to get better results on Facebook and Instagram. So it'll be a nice little bump, but nothing crazy or drastic. I think some people are comparing this to when ads first rolled out to Instagram, and that was a boom. But Instagram, that was a whole different beast, and so many more monthly active users, so much more that you can do on that platform. Whereas Threads is just kind of a very simple text-based feed. So again, it's not something that I am jumping for joy and thinking that this is going to completely transform everyone's campaigns, but it'll be a nice little thing to have in there, and I think we'll all see a nice little boost, and hey, we'll take all the wins that we can get, right? So hopefully you found this update interesting. Like I said, this is only a few select companies that are doing this, or have access to this, I should say. I do anticipate that the rest of us will have access to this by the end of the year, so we'll see how it turns out. Maybe we'll do it in time for the holidays, and we'll all have a good go at it. So if you have any questions about this topic or anything else that I cover on this channel, just go ahead and let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time.